Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
For our Ash Wednesday episode, we are reading John chapter 10, verses 1 through 18. And I'm not going to lie, wishing we had a lot more experience with sheep herding and sheepfolds. We wonder, who are these robbers and thieves climbing over the fence? And what kind of fence is this if robbers and thieves can just skip the gate entirely? What difference does it make that the shepherd walks out ahead of the flock, where he can lead and guide, but he can't really keep an eye on the sheep or attune to all the surrounding dangers in the same way? What does Jesus mean when he refers to his own sheep? Could there be sheep in the fold that are not his own? And after talking up all this trust and care and deep connection between the shepherd and his own sheep, what do you mean the shepherd has other flocks too? It seems like this intimacy is not the gatekeeping kind. Thanks for being with us. Hello, Bobby. It is Bible Worm time.
Hey, Amy, it is time for the Bible Worm.
For some reason, after our last episode, I was thinking about, our listeners may not know, you record in a place where trains go by with some frequency. And so we ordinarily, you just we wait for the train to go by so people don't hear the train. And there were many trains the last time we recorded, and I started thinking, maybe we should call it the Bible Train, and then it sounds sort of like a kid's cartoon, sort of like Dinosaur Train.
Yeah, Dinosaur Train, that's a good one.
But then I was like, Bible Train sounds too childish, unlike Bible Worm, which sounds very serious.
Which sounds very sophisticated.
So then I was like, how else could we remix it? And I was like, Worm Train. Or Bible.
Yeah, Bible, that gets Worm Train misses the essentials, but Bible is you have no doubt what that one's about.
Maybe it could be Bible with the subtitle, The Worm Train. And no, that would be... Anyway.
Well, speaking of background noise, I will tell you that normally, yes, I am in my office and there's that train that goes by periodically. And so typically we have edited that out. Today, although normally we pretend like we don't exist in time and space, I will tell you that we're in the middle of that big snowstorm that has come through.
Yeah.
Arkansas. It ended up not being huge, but there's 8 inches of very sleddable snow in my neighborhood. But it also means that I'm recording in my house and my children are here. And so who knows what's going to happen in the background today. And probably we're not going to edit it out. So
if you hear the joyful sounds of children in the background, just accept the joy into your heart and we'll just keep it pushing.
Yeah.
Well, today is a special episode. We are doing
Every
a reading.
episode is a special episode.
Every episode is a special episode.
Together, it's special for me.
But this is an especially special episode.
There you go. Yes.
For Ash Wednesday.
Yes.
Maybe towards the end of the episode, we can try to think about how this particular text fits with Ash Wednesday. We're reading John chapter 10, verses 1 through 18. Before we get right into that text, though, you want to offer us a little bit of context about this day that we are marking with this reading?
Sure. So Ash Wednesday marks the beginning of a period known in the Christian tradition as Lent. And Lent is a 40-day period, not counting Sundays, that goes from Ash Wednesday to Easter. And so it culminates in Holy Week and then ultimately in the resurrection of Jesus, spoiler alert, on Easter Sunday. And Lent is a period of introspection and taking stock of where you are and where your community is and where the world is and the ways in which we may have fallen short of the ideal set out for us in the scripture, and trying to think about ways of reorienting ourselves as we head toward the Easter resurrection and sort of emerging into new life. And so Ash Wednesday is a day on which people gather, usually in the evening, but anytime during the day. And there is imposition of ashes on the forehead in many congregations. And the pastor or the priest will say something like, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return," reminding ourselves of finitude and mortality. And so then you're into this period. The period in the Christian tradition reminds me a little bit of what you say about Yom Kippur, but just stretched out for 40 days.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the whole month of Elul, which is the month leading up to the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But it's a time to really, it's like in a Heshbon HaNefesh is that Hebrew term. It's like an accounting of the soul to really like get real about where you're at, where you might have like drifted a little bit off the path that you think is the path you ought to be on.
Yeah.
And what a moment in the world to invite that kind of reflection.
Yes, for real.
Well, let's read some text and see how this text might inform all of that.
Let's do it.
What do you think?
Yeah. This text, by the way, is not a typical Lenten text. So when you think of like, what are the texts that you read on Ash Wednesday? Like, this is not really it. But it's where the narrative lectionary gets us. And it invites some interesting... I just like ways of opening texts in different ways. And so like, what does this text say in this particular moment, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, if you hold these sort of a different lens on the text or a different text on the holiday, like
exactly.
What does it open up for us differently? So we've mentioned that we're in John chapter 10, starting at the very beginning, which is just a direct continuation from the sort of, not just from the text we were in before, but the scene that we were in before.
And actually just, I think Jesus' speech that we started last time is just continuing on here. So he said, if you were blind, you wouldn't have any sin. But now that you say we see, your sin remains. And then our text today just picks up in the next sentence of his, I think, continuing speech to the Pharisees.
All right. Well, then I am going to start us off. I am reading from the NRSV. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. That's relatable.
Yeah. yes.
Yeah, we really have the conversation preceding this was not like a sort of parable, was not a metaphor.
Right.
Like this is. So I'm trying to stay in the concrete language of the text before trying to assign metaphorical meaning to different things.
Yes.
We will get there. Jesus will even help us get there this time, which I really appreciated.
Yes.
Okay, so these sheep are grouped together and both like confined and maybe protected by a gate.
Yes.
Right? Okay. But thieves and robbers can climb into the gate. So this is not like maybe the sheep can't get out. I guess the wolves can't get in.
You're thinking that the sheepfold maybe isn't the best design? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess I was just surprised. I was surprised at the image of the robbers climbing over the gate. And then I guess they would have to pick up a sheep.
Yeah, I don't think they're climbing over this is the way I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do pick up. Yes, they can pick up the sheep. It is so, you take your sheep out and you pasture them out and about in the world, and then you bring them home. And the sheepfold is sort of like the barn and the pen near the house where the sheep come to spend the night, like when you're not out pasturing. And so there's this gate through which the sheep enter the fold and through which the legitimate shepherd brings the sheep. And then it does seem to be the case that out, in the back 40, there's a fence, and that probably does keep the sheep in and the wolves out, but it is possible for people to climb over. It's interesting that it doesn't actually talk about the people who climb over taking sheep, although they are said to be thieves and robbers, and so maybe that's what they're up to. But the sense is that they are the danger is that they're in the sheepfold with the sheep. And so the sheep might mistake them for a legitimate shepherd. But you and I know they're not, because they jumped over the fence to get in there. They didn't come through the gate. Something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to think about it, that the primary danger is that the sheep will get confused about which human they're supposed to follow.
I think that's right. Yeah. So just because somebody's in the fold does not mean they are safe to follow.
And then we learned that there's also a gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And both the gatekeeper and the sheep recognize this shepherd.
Yes.
The text really goes out of its way to tell us that they recognize the shepherd by his voice. Why don't they just know what their person looks like?
That's an interesting question. Where my head goes to, like, maybe sheep don't have very good eyesight or something. Like, I don't really know, which maybe is not the point here. But yeah, I really like this image because, I mean, the sound of his voice speaks one kind of thing, like just like the tenor of his voice they recognize. But if you just press it one step further to the kinds of things that he says, or the sort of way he speaks to them, like maybe there's a tenderness, maybe there's a familiarity, maybe there's a kindness. And so they respond to that sort of speaking. Whereas these other bandits and outlaws, maybe they kind of look all right. They look like human authority figures. Mm-hmm. But if you listen to the way they speak and the kinds of things that they say, you realize they're not on the up and up.
So it's maybe not just a sensory recognition.
That's the way that I need to hear it to make sense of it. I'm not sure that there might be another step you could make.
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking a little bit that, we've just come out of this conversation in chapter 9 about blindness.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of, and there was a whole chapter talking about blindness and seeing, and then it gets into the more metaphorical blindness and seeing. And I also am thinking about various places in the Hebrew Bible where, first I was thinking of like Isaac being tricked by Jacob, and Isaac says, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but
yes,
I don't know that he feels and smells like Esau because he's put all this like furry stuff on him to try to seem more.
We
like
read that
Esau.
text earlier this year. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some other places in the Hebrew Bible, again, maybe metaphorically, but maybe not metaphorically, that really warn against following what looks good to your eyes.
Yes.
Like eyes, I don't know, it seemed like
I like that a lot.
Many humans are really tempted by our eyes.
Yeah. We also read that David, the anointing of David text this year, in which, Eliab, the oldest son, comes out and Samuel says, that's the guy. And
Yep, he looks
God
good.
says, no. Yeah.
Yep.
God does not look on the outward appearance. God looks on the heart. I like that a lot, Amy.
Yeah.
You were pointing us back to this the man who is blind from birth story. And, you were saying earlier that this text we're reading is just a continuation in some sense of that story. And there is something in that text in which the man did recognized Jesus's voice, even though he had never met Jesus before. But he trusted something and went and washed in the pool. And so there's something about the way that Jesus speaks or the things that Jesus says, and not simply like, oh, this is a familiar voice.
Yeah. And if Jesus is coming precisely so that those who are metaphorically blind
Yes.
can come to see,
Yes.
then I guess it would make sense for this story to lean on a different
Different
sensory
sense.
experience. While we're sort of in this bigger picture, can we just back up for a moment and talk about sheep? Or shepherds? I mean, I just really, every time I read these stories, I wish that I had some experience shepherding sheep.
Yeah. We should do a Bible worm retreat to a sheep farm where you and I can gain some sheep experience.
Yeah.
And then maybe we could like read the Bible with people or something.
That'd
be good. Yeah.
That would be really very much a stretch for my capacities.
Yeah. It would be good though. Then we could have a different kind of conversation when we read sheep texts.
So I can't speak very much to the experience of being a shepherd, but there certainly are lots of biblical texts that pull on this literally and also pull on it as a metaphor. And of course, it's a metaphor because it is so much in the lives of people. So I wonder if there are particular texts you want us to have in our minds or particular uses of this metaphor that we might have in the back of our minds.
So you're thinking about how our sheep use metaphorically
and shepherds
in biblical texts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there stories we should have in mind or texts?
I mean, the one that sort of leaps to mind for me, well, there's several now that I say that. One is the story we were just talking about in which Samuel goes and anoints David. And of course, he's a shepherd who is out in the field shepherding. And he continues to be sort of known in that sense as a shepherd. And so something about the good leadership of the people of Israel is shepherd-like in its orientation to the people.
Yes. And Moses is shepherding too when he encounters a burning bush.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about that, but that's exactly right. The other one that, just like immediately leaps out is the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd. Such a beautiful and rich text. And then with this particular reference here, scholars will refer to Ezekiel 34. In that text, God is saying to the people through the prophet Ezekiel, you've had a lot of bad shepherds along the way who have led you astray, which seems to be talking about the series of bad kings in Israel and Judah who are more interested. Who are often more interested in their own enrichment than they are in actually taking care of people. And so there's the bad shepherds. And then God says, I will come and be your shepherd. And eventually that text yields to like, I'm going to establish a leader for you who is going to shepherd you like you're supposed to be shepherded. But there's this kind of intervention that God makes in this series of bad shepherds by just taking over the job and saying, I'm going to be your shepherd. Those are the texts that occur to me.
Yeah, no, I think those are good ones to have in our background. So it seems like Jesus, okay, no, not Jesus. We're not coming out of the metaphor yet. The shepherd. The shepherd.
Yes.
Has a different relationship to some of the sheep than some of the other sheep in this sheepfold.
Can you help me get there?
Yes. Well, I mean, and actually I would love to be wrong, but in verse 3, it says he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out.
Yeah.
When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them. So maybe it's a question there, like, is it that some of the sheep are his own and some of them are not? Or is this like a really emphatic way of saying that the shepherd has that kind of closeness to all the sheep in the fold?
I initially read it that second way, and I love the way that you said that. They are his own sheep. Like, yes, the emphatic.
Yeah.
If you read it the other way, it's kind of interesting because now you've got a mixed sheepfold That's not just that there are some leaderly bandits and robbers in there, but also there's some sheep in there who don't belong, which takes me in a whole interesting direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that it's one that I really like that much.
I don't love that direction. So
Yeah.
so maybe we make that hermeneutic choice to read it as an emphatic sense of relationship and care and responsibility.
You know, the ancestor of my particular tradition, the great reformer John Calvin, talked about the visible and invisible church. And he saw them as like a Venn diagram that were overlapping. And so some people in the visible church are actually the sheep of the shepherd, and some of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some people outside of the visible church who are part of the true community, but they're not actually in the church community either yet or at all. And so there is this sense of a mixed sheepfold and of their sheep someplace else. And there's something helpful about that idea that just because somebody shows up in the sheepfold does not mean necessarily that they are trustworthy or part of the community.
Yeah.
There's something that sounds right about that, even though I don't really love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to hold on to that question because I feel like it could have real ramifications for how we read this unfolding
Yes.
metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah. Bobby, okay, again, I don't know anything about shepherding sheep, but I was surprised that he goes out in front of them. He goes ahead of them and they follow him. Are you surprised by that?
So you
if
sort of
he's in
thought he would go behind.
Well, if he's in front of them, he can't see them.
Mm.
And so it's one thing to trust they will follow you because they recognize your voice, and I guess you're singing a little song the whole time, so they know so they know where you are and they should stay with you.
Little sheep, you're going to the pasture.
But it seems like danger could come from any side. So if the shepherd's job is to protect the flock, I wouldn't have expected the shepherd to be in front of them, but like in their midst or behind them or something.
I don't know. I guess the idea is that the sheep don't really know where to go unless somebody shows them where to go.
Yeah.
And you know, the danger is that the bandits and robbers are in the sheepfold. Like the danger is actually behind you in this text, which is kind of interesting. I guess there might be different dangers in front of you too. But
I do think, as you're saying, I do think it is really holding up the role of like leadership and direction and sort of the invitation of the shepherd's voice.
Yes.
As opposed to like the visual, scanning the visual field, watching to make sure your sheep are doing what they're supposed to do, or things that you might be able to do from behind.
Yes.
That you can't do from the front. Really, they need two shepherds, Bobby.
I think so. That's what I was thinking too. We need a shepherding team.
Yes, a shepherding team. Mm-hmm. So I can't say I blame the audience here for not understanding what he was saying to them. But it makes a point of saying they don't understand. And so I wonder, what do you think of verse 6?
Yeah, this is where going back to the previous chapter is really important. Because when I read this, I was like, I don't really understand what you're talking about either, Jesus. But the they in that sentence is at least at some level the Pharisees from chapter 9, verse 40. Mm-hmm. The Pharisees were with him. They heard what he said. And remember, those Pharisees says, surely we aren't blind, are we? And so Jesus in the previous chapter at the end has been saying, you think you can see, but you really can't. And they're suddenly realizing Jesus is talking about them, maybe. And then now Jesus continues to talk about them. And so I think what is happening is that Jesus is saying these religious leaders who are more interested in the letter of the law and the kicking out of people who don't conform are the bandits and the thieves, the robbers, and the religious leaders who are listening are like kind of picking up what he's putting down, but they can't get their heads around it. So they don't understand what he's saying, I think means they don't understand that he's talking about them. They don't conceive of themselves as being illegitimate inhabitants of the sheepfold and the bandits and the robbers. They think we're the leaders of this group.
Right.
Which is then interesting, because if the bandits and the robbers don't quite understand that they're bandits and robbers.
Right. It's such that I love that, because it's such a different way of conceiving of what bandits and robbers are in the story, or what they're doing, or what they think they're doing. That's a very different thing than, ascribing sort of malice to a thief, that they intend to take something that they know is not theirs for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
You don't even know that you're the robber in a scenario.
Yeah.
It's kind of a different thing.
Yeah. So at least some of these robbers think they're the legitimate shepherd. Yeah. That's intense.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on to the next section, I just feel like I need to articulate that in my community, the word gatekeeper, and actually it's been turned into a verb, to gatekeep, has fallen profoundly out of favor.
Yes.
that often religious leaders in my community feel like there are some people who want them to be gatekeepers to the community, or gatekeepers to Judaism, or gatekeepers to something, and they feel that is not their job, and they don't. But it's a hot word right now in my world.
Yeah.
I don't think that really is related to what this story is saying about gatekeepers, because they're not talking about what sheep can or can't come in. They're talking about who is the rightful leader of the sheep. I don't think it's the same thing, but it's just kind of it's a very active word in my consciousness. So I just want to name that.
That is so helpful, Amy.
Is that a conversation in your community?
It is, sure. Yeah. And, what you're making me think of, too, is that in the previous story, it was exactly that the people were afraid that the religious leaders were going to kick them out of the community if they professed a non-normative belief.
Right.
And so this text is actually not that excited about gatekeepers either. Mm-hmm. But also it is.
Yeah, this is the gate to keep.
Yes. Got to have the right kind of gatekeeper, keeping the right kind of gate. Something like that.
Yes. Hi, y'all. It's Amy, one of your friendly co-hosts, and I want to tell you why Bible Worm is important to me. There's a Jewish tradition that Torah study is best done with a partner, a Hevruta, we call it, someone who pushes you beyond where you would have gone on your own. Bobby was essentially my Hevruta for 10 years of grad school, and I've never found a thought partner quite like him. So when he asked if I wanted to read text together, there was no real thought process before I said yes. The decision to record this podcast the way we do was risky. We don't have a script. We don't pre-talk things. We are thinking together live. And it is my hope that precisely because of that, you feel invited to think along with us. Because everyone needs a Hevruta. And if you don't have one, I hope you will let us be yours. If this way of being in relationship to biblical text speaks to you the way it speaks to me, I hope you'll help sustain us through Patreon at whatever level makes sense for you. There are some nice perks if you need them. Liturgies, videos, monthly discussion groups. This year I've added some recordings of the chanting of these texts that you might hear in a synagogue. Or you can just support us to show your appreciation and help us know that this work matters. Thanks for listening and for supporting us however you can. Okay, are you ready to go on?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to pick up in verse 7. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." this might just be like a lovely little literary note here, but I love that both the metaphor and the beginning of the discussion about the metaphor start with this, very truly, I tell you.
Yes. Amen, amen.
Yeah, right. Bobby, I did not think Jesus was going to be the gate.
No.
That's not where I thought this was going.
We were setting up for he's the good shepherd, which he's going to be in a minute.
We were setting up for he's the good shepherd, and we're going to get there too. But before he's the shepherd, he's the gate.
Yes.
Not even the gatekeeper.
He's just a
He's
gate.
the gate. I didn't even know that was a character in this like children's play that I can sort of envision. And he says it twice.
Yes.
Very emphatic.
Yes.
How is Jesus the gate?
So there's a way in which I am the gate and I am the gatekeeper are really close to each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if you just like let him be the gatekeeper for just a second.
Okay, fine. We'll let them just sort of allied. Okay.
Then it's saying that the people who the gatekeeper allows in are and out are legitimately people who have found the way. And so you must come through this kind of, the one who is the source of life and the one who is the source of all things and the one who comes to bring life to the world and the one who comes in love and not in judgment. Those who come that way, that this sort of gatekeeper, if we read it that way, allows those people in and out. And so you can trust that the people who come through that are allowed through that gate are truly part of the community. I think if you then take what it actually says, which is I'm not the gatekeeper, but the gate itself, like that just in my mind just amplifies that. Like the gate it has its own agency, and it's not that somebody could slip past the gatekeeper because the gate itself, like you must come through that gate. That is, you must come through the Word who was in the beginning and who is the source of life and light for the world. You must come that way. And, I don't know, like sort of like a permeable membrane that if you're not, like if you don't belong in that gate, in that sheepfold, you just bounce off. But if you do belong, then you can, I just said Jesus is a permeable membrane, which so I guess I really mean.
Someone should really title their sermon that way.
I guess I really mean semi-permeable membrane. But yeah, permeable to the right kinds of sheep. And so it just sort of amplifies that. Like it takes one, like it's not that you now have a person who has to watch the gate. It's that you have a gate that knows itself, maybe.
It's so interesting because in the last paragraph, we were only talking about people coming in and out.
Yeah.
The thieves and bandits that climb over the sides.
Yes.
And
the
real shepherd who comes in the gate. But now it's the sheep that are moving in and out.
That is so important, Amy. It's not about who lets the right shepherd in and out. Now it's about the sheep. Yes. So we've got a gate in both of these passages, but you're exactly right that the gate is doing something slightly different here.
And it's so interesting to me that, I guess some part of my memory sort of lit up when it was sort of like, whoever enters by me will be saved. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yes.
And so then I had in my mind sort of will be saved as though you enter by the gate and you come into the kingdom of heaven or something like that, which I'm still picturing as being what's inside the gate because you've come in through the gate.
Yes.
But then they don't only stay inside, they come in and out of the gate.
They come in and go out and find pasture. Yeah.
And find pasture. I don't know. How does that play for you? How does that play for you?
I love what you're seeing there, Amy. That's so important because it is very tempting, especially in my community, to read this as like the sheep pen is the kingdom of heaven. And so you come through the gate and you're in the kingdom of heaven, which is some sort of glorious afterlife. And once you've made it into the pen, all is well and good forever and ever. Amen. And this is not that. It is saying something different about what saved means, which we have talked about before, I think, which is that this idea of being saved or being rescued is not only post-death thing, but a now thing.
Mm.
And this idea of the kingdom of heaven, or however we want to frame it, is not just a sequestered afterlife. It is a way of living in the world. And so you come in and you gather with the community, and then you go out and live in the world. For whatever reason, that go out and find pasture is reminding me of the 23rd Psalm, which is, that has the sense that God leads you in the world, and the world is a difficult place.
Yes.
And yet God finds a place of rest for you, and God makes a table in the presence of your enemies. There's no shying away from the world in that psalm.
Yes.
It is finding peace in the midst of that world.
Yes.
And so I read this kind of similarly. You can't just come in and be in. You've got to come in and go out.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful, Bobby. I love the way you said that. And it, maybe strangely, it has me thinking about when I think about the animal world, you and I are both vegetarians, so maybe we're sort of aligned in this way, but sort of like what constitutes what I imagine to be like a good and full life for an animal.
Yeah.
And that the animal, either for safety reasons or for economic abusive reasons, might be kept penned up in a very small space.
Yes.
That's not the point. That's not the destiny. Like, that's not that's not what we're here to do.
Right.
That's not what the animals are here to do. And it's, metaphorically, again, not if we're only in the gate.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we are safer in the gate, but that's not the point,
Yeah. I love that, Amy. And what you're making me think too is like, if the herd was always just in the sheepfold, they're going to graze that sheepfold to the ground.
Yeah.
And then they're all like, that's not going to be sustaining.
Right.
And so you must go out into the world in order to find your sustenance.
Right. It's just not how it works.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to stay out all the time. Like, you could have a shepherd lead them out, and they could have this wonderful world out in the pasture forever, and
Yeah.
And there is this sense of like coming back to this place to rest. That's a little
a little safety and security from the world. From time to time.
Safer, a little more secure, a little more with your favorite sheep.
Yes. I just want to say for the record that I am a pescatarian. I have not been able to sustain being a vegetarian, so I've gotten as close as I can, but I don't want to claim more for myself than I've actually been able to accomplish.
Okay, I appreciate your
So the sheep are safe for
honesty.
me. But
the sheep, but not the fish.
not the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I was curious what you thought about this. All who came before me were thieves and outlaws, but the sheep didn't listen to them. There is a way of reading that is like, Jesus is the first good shepherd. And there's been nothing good before Jesus. You might imagine that that's not the way that I want to read that, but I'm curious how did you read that?
I mean, to be honest, I found it a little confusing even in its own context, because if nobody was listening to the thieves and bandits, then it seems like they wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah.
That is not, even just in the Hebrew Bible, that is not the story of things, that nobody listens to the bad leaders.
Yeah.
Would that were the story.
Right.
So I again am confused about who are the thieves and bandits, and are we talking about all the sheep that didn't listen to them? Or is there a subgroup of the shepherd's own sheep who were not confused and misled by some other group of leaders? I have not answered your question about sort of supersessionism or whatnot in here, which maybe we should also get to, but I feel like I don't understand it on the face of it.
Yeah, I will say that this text seems to have a higher regard for the sheep than I do. In this, but for what you're saying, they didn't follow, and we saw it also in the previous. They won't follow a stranger. Yeah, so I mean, I'm with you that I think exactly the problem is that some sheep are persuaded, And maybe we ourselves sometimes are persuaded by a stranger's voice or an illegitimate shepherd.
But to your original question, all who came before me are thieves and bandits. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. It just bounces off my brain that this would be referring to Jewish leadership through the ages. Like, that just sounds insane to me. My first thought was like, maybe they're talking about false messiahs. Like, there is, Jesus is not the only person around this time claiming this role. Yeah, I don't know. That's as far as I can get.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, the Gospel of John has a high regard for people like Moses and Abraham and others. And so I think you can't, or you shouldn't, read it as everything until now has been corrupted.
Thieves and bandits that are seeking to kill and destroy. Like, more modified language, I might not be so surprised to find some supersessionist language or like a harsh critique of that generation of rabbinic leadership. But this kind of blanket statement, I just don't see how he could be referring to.
Yeah, I think that's right. This is one of the places where I think Ezekiel 34 is kind of helpful, because there God is sort of saying the leaders that you have had have been terrible, and so I'm taken over. And that's not God or Ezekiel saying everything up until now has been terrible, but it is saying like the leadership that has been going on in the sort of memory of the people that has gotten us to this moment has been self-interested and taking advantage.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good way to read it.
That's following
really people who follow the logic of the empire. Maybe they're false messiahs, but also maybe they're the Pharisees that we're talking, like religious leaders who have gotten themselves connected to the imperial authority, have lost track of what is truly God, and have become interested in their own self-interest. So I think that's the right way to read it, is there are people who are functioning according to the imperial logic, and I'm offering you something different.
All right. You ready to move on?
Yes.
There's still more to come. This is not going to get simpler. Okay. I'm picking up in verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. Okay, that was a lot. There's really a lot in there.
There's a lot, so much in there.
So as we mentioned already, we started with I am the gate, which is like, again, emphatically said. It's said twice. And here we get I am the good shepherd.
Yes.
Emphatically twice. And part of what Jesus is saying is what makes him a good shepherd is this willingness to lay down his own life, whereas a hired hand, is sort of like doing its job, but like when push comes to shove, is like he'll do the basics, but if things get really dangerous, he's out of the picture. I feel really drawn to and curious about the language here of laying down your life versus sort of risking your life or being unafraid or something like that. Laying down your life sounds, you're saying yes, so I wonder if you, how do you think about that phrase? Like how do you think about that phrase?
I think there's a little, maybe bleed over here
Yeah.
between this story and an anticipation of the end of John's gospel, in which Jesus, in fact, does give up his life and take it back, so that
Yeah.
you know in the end of this gospel, you know that the shepherd is in fact willing to do that and does it. It's not just an idea of what he might do.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to read it like with one foot in each of those worlds. So one foot is, yes, a good shepherd is willing to lay down their life and take risks and protect people. And also Jesus in this gospel does it. And so we know that he means it when he says it. And we're sort of like straddling that line a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I can understand it in that context. It's just if I try to hold it in this context,
Yeah.
where like the death of the shepherd is not protective for the sheep, like
Yeah. Yeah.
if we're staying in the sheep realm.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. If this is sort of pressing us beyond the edges of the metaphor.
I like the way you're thinking about that, Amy, because it really doesn't quite make sense that, yeah, if the wolf attacks the flock and the shepherd dies, then you think, okay, now the wolf or the rest of the pack or whatever.
Then also they scatter and
yeah. So what you want a shepherd to do is kill the wolf.
Right. You don't want a shepherd who's afraid and won't interact with the wolf. But
you also don't want a shepherd that gets eaten by the wolf.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. I love that you're sort of pointing out that problem, because this is the illogic of the gospel message, right? Is that in fact the way to defeat the wolf is to be killed by the wolf, and then to demonstrate that in fact being killed by the wolf is not the end of the story, because when the shepherd takes up his life again, thereby defeating the very power of death.
Yeah.
But the sheep are still in danger from the wolf.
Yeah.
Just like the followers of Jesus are still in danger from the empire.
No, I think that's exactly right. That this is not a little bit like I was saying earlier, having the shepherd walking in front of you offers leadership and guidance and some safety, but it's not, I feel like there's not sort of the promise of perfect safety, which exactly is, as you often point out to us, like that's not what's on offer here.
Yeah.
Bodily safety.
Yeah.
But it does press us out of the metaphor, because that is what we want for sheep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, there's so many things in here. Okay, let's talk about verse 14. I know my own, and my own know me. And then that goes on into, just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. Can you talk to me about this sort of analogy? Like the way I know my sheep is to the way the sheep know me, as the way my Father knows me is the way I know my Father.
Well, that's like an SAT question.
It's an SAT. I actually wrote it out like as an SAT question in my notes. Like what?
Yeah.
Is it just, I mean, clearly there's some role of like, you're the, okay, the shepherd is the leader, the sheep are the follower. I guess it sounds to me like there's some hierarchy being suggested of Father and Jesus here. I'm sure that is problematic in some universe, but that is what it seems like it's saying to me.
Yes.
But is there more to it for you?
I mean, the way that it's making sense in my head is, John elsewhere says, Jesus says, I abide in the Father and he abides in me. And then we have that line from the prologue that the Word became flesh and tabernacled among them. And so there is a sense in which Jesus is the connective tissue. Like a later Christian theology is going to say Jesus is fully divine, fully human. Mm-hmm. John is kind of grappling after that, although he probably doesn't have the language for it just yet. Mm-hmm. But that sense in which there is a connection between God and Jesus. There is also a connection between Jesus and human. And so the ones who truly belong to him really do, like, are connected to him in that same way that he is connected to the Father. Amy, what this is making me think about is back to that conversation we were having earlier about, are there sheep in the sheepfold who don't actually know Jesus' voice, but they just follow along because that's where all the other sheep are going. And this passage is leading me in that similar direction, that there are sheep who are maybe in the flock who don't know him. And so that Jesus has a special connection with some of the sheep who do recognize his voice. But there might well be other sheep along who just happen to be there. I think I'm being led in that direction, even though I kind of resist that idea.
Yeah.
I've resisted that idea since the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah. I think another, related to that, Bobby, another, I don't know, question or like, a little piece of sand in the oyster for me is this idea that I know my own and my own know me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it has been one of the challenges of the story that people don't necessarily know Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like reading that, it would sound like Jesus could walk through the streets and people would just start following.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess certainly Jesus has begun to have followers, but has said, like, you people require signs and wonders. Like, it's not just Jesus's voice.
Yeah.
And so it does seem like there needs to be space, at least for some of the sheep within this broader community to not know, to not recognize Jesus' voice.
I think that's right, Amy. And this is one of the places where the connection to that previous story of the man born blind is helpful, because he doesn't know who Jesus is and can't see Jesus, can't recognize Jesus at the beginning of that story. But over the course of the story, he comes to and responds in the end and bows down and worships him. And so I think you're right. There must be some kind of movement here that is, when we encounter Jesus, they keep digging until they come to know me. But it's not just like some people already know and some people don't. But you might compare him to the other man that we when was that text? 2 weeks ago, when the man by the pool at Bethsaida is healed by Jesus, but then it's like, I don't know who that guy was. And he never quite seems to make it. And so he's not one of the sheep, but the second man is, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's not this expectation of like immediate recognition.
I think that's right. But when you hear the voice, you're like, oh, you want to come and see. You keep, like the woman at the well, like you're like, wait, something's here.
Yeah. Again, I just think that the thought of it being the voice that's familiar is so evocative for me. I don't know why. It's just, it's not that you understand it logically. It's not that you see it, but there's something about the voice.
Yeah.
You're making me think of this midrash about, I'm sure I've told it before, that when Moses is walking by the burning bush, that God calls out from the bush, Moses, Moses, and God calls in the voice of Moses' father.
So I don't think I have heard that.
So he'll stop.
I love that.
There is something about recognizing a voice.
I love that, and I love the idea that the voice might sound different to you than to me than to somebody else. Calls out in a voice that, like, it has its own like authenticness, but also in a way that we can hear.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Bobby, I don't have anything smart to say about the fact that there are other sheep in other pens, but it seems like we would be remiss not to mention it. Like, the whole scale of this story just like, really exploded. First, there's just this one little group of sheep in a pen, but actually this shepherd has a couple different pens going at the same time. Is there more we should say about that other than just to point out that, I mean, I don't know, do you want to like, it seems to me like it's maybe suggesting not just Israel, but also people from other nations?
So yes, I think that's probably the first sense of it. I think that's probably the first sense of it. Like you can tell by my
No, great.
reaction
Okay,
there
so
that
that's
it's
the
a little
baseline.
limited.
Amy got the baseline. Good. Okay.
No, I didn't mean Amy got the baseline. I'm just saying like this is often where people will end, which is to say, yeah, I mean like he called this Samaritan woman and like there are Gentiles too.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I'm like, is because if that's where you sort of stop, then it's just saying like the gospel is going to move past the Jews to the Gentiles. And that's the point.
Mm.
And I don't like that point.
Mm-hmm.
I like,
I would like more.
I like the point that when we get in our little sheepfold with our little sheep that we recognize and we're like, yes, we are the sheep of the shepherd, that we tend to think we're the only, we're it. And so we look at other sheep out there and we're like, I'm with the good shepherd. And this is saying the care of the shepherd extends beyond any visible community that you might think is the end of the shepherd's care. There is more. God's grace is broad. For God so loved the world. He came so that all might have life, right? Like the mission is enormous. And so whenever we want to draw a line around the sheepfold that we can see, we should be careful about that line. Jesus knows the sheep. He knows who belongs. He knows who hears his voice. He knows whose names he knows. But you and I don't know. And no sheep knows. And so I think to me that's it, is like God's mercy is wider than we imagine.
I think that's such an important, I'm really glad I asked because that is beautiful. And I think it's such an important, not correction, but sort of like counterweight to this particularity of the relationship that we get in this word, like my own sheep.
Right.
Like that, yes, you are my own sheep. And also I have other own sheep. Like,
yes. Yeah.
There is that kind of intimacy, but the intimacy is not the gatekeeping kind of intimacy.
I think eventually where I come down with that idea is, like what is Jesus speaking and what are people hearing? And it's about life and abundance, self-givingness, and all of these ideas that we've been talking about since the prologue. There's some people who get that, and there's some people who function according to the imperial logic about power over and taking from and securing my own and exploitation of. And people get there in different ways. We don't all get there exactly the same way. But because Jesus, in the telling of John's gospel, is the word, is the light, that if you got there somehow or another, you came through that gate. And if you didn't, then you just stayed in the imperial fold. And so at some level, this is it's a binary. You're either imperial or you're heaven. But the ways, the number of different ways of getting into that heaven flock seem manifold, multiple.
Okay, for our last couple of minutes, I wonder if we could talk about verses 17 and 18. I have two questions. The first is, when Jesus says, "For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again." I just don't know I don't really know how to make sense of that. Because you are willing to die, because you have the capacity to be resurrected, but didn't God give you that capacity? And so maybe I don't understand what the verb love means there.
That's interesting, Amy. Is where I get tripped up is, what does this mean? What's the definition of is? Yeah. Here's how I process it. Is the love of God, the love of the Father for Jesus, consists in that Jesus does not cling to life as though death is a negation of life. Jesus recognizes that life is the negation of death, and therefore one does not have to cling to life, but can receive it again. And so you don't live in the fear of death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For this reason, like, it feels a little limiting to me. Like, if Jesus didn't get that, then like, would God not love him?
Yeah, I know. We want to give them some family therapy.
That bit bugs me a little bit, and I don't quite know what to do with it. But if you just like, okay, like I'm not going to ask that question, but I'm just going to say like, what is it that God loves here? Then that's where I land.
Yeah, it's making me think about the sort of Hebrew Bible's story, like the sacrifice of first fruits or first, like you have to be willing to give up the thing and trust that there will be more.
Yes.
Except like this is on a very different scale. You have to be willing to give up the life that you have here in your body right now. Jesus does. I mean, I'm not suggesting our people move to martyrdom, but
right.
There's really something about that.
Yes.
So why do you think Jesus is so insistent that we know in verse 18 that it is Jesus's choice to do this? This is not something that happens to Jesus, but Jesus lays down his life of his own accord.
The way that I read that is there is a way of reading this Jesus story that the Roman Empire took Jesus's life away from him. And he does not want us to think that the empire has the power to do that of its own accord. And so that there is a greater purpose in this drama that is playing out, which is to demonstrate that in fact the power of the Roman Empire is no power.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I feel like it speaks to, or tries to speak to like we've talked about this before, but like I think many Jewish people read this story as overwhelmingly sad. It's such a sad story. It's such a good rabbi who is killed in this terrible way. It's a terribly sad story. And it changes it to think that this was always the intention and that the participants, that Jesus was an active and intentional participant in this story. Like this is the way that Jesus chose for it to go in some way. Ooh, that was quite a sheep story that we read.
That was. And a gate story also. And
a gate story, yes. Okay, Bobby, for this Ash Wednesday reading, what is rising up for you?
The thing that is rising up for me is this kind of mixedness of the sheepfold and the flock. That there are leaders in the sheepfold who in fact are outlaws and bandits who have climbed in over the fence. And they themselves may not even realize, as here the religious leaders maybe seem to not recognize that Jesus is talking about them. And they are there among us. And I am also reading now that idea of I know mine and they know me. But maybe there are also other sheep around who actually are not legitimately part of the flock. And then the question becomes, how do you know? How do you recognize who really is part of the community? And the answer is because they hear my voice. They recognize my voice. They pass through the gate that is me. And I'm really drawn to this idea that we've been developing here, that it's not so much what Jesus's voice sounds like, and maybe that beautiful midrash that you gave us, that maybe it sounds different to different ones of us, but the essence of it is about life and protecting life and leading people into pasture in the midst of death, and not like a bandit and an outlaw, like power over or taking from or orienting people toward death and violence. Like that's not what Jesus talks about. That's not what Jesus does. And so to recognize Jesus's voice in this text is to recognize something about the power of life and the protection of life and the looking out for the ones who are vulnerable to the wolves and protecting them. And that's who is part of the true flock. That's who the true leader is. That's who a true follower is. That's who Jesus truly is. And so in this world in which religion gets oriented over and against people in powerful ways, now as it did then, like that's not it. It's this other thing, this willingness to give up one's life to protect the life of another, to recognize that death is not the negation of life, but life is a negation of death, and to be willing to serve life even if there is a great cost to it. And that's what it is. So we need to be careful about who our leaders are. We need to be careful about who we are and what voice we're listening to. The other thing I love in this text is that last verse 16, I have other sheep that don't belong to the pen.
Yeah.
Like there's both a warning there, right? Like don't think that the sheep you can see as the sheep are the only ones. Like it's bigger than that. But there's also a real encouragement there that you might feel like the community is small and you might feel like there's only a few of you. But in fact, there's so many more out there that you don't know about. And the power of life is working itself through them too. And so don't be frightened. Don't feel overwhelmed. Like just trust that there are also others out there that you might not see who also are responding to the shepherd. I think that's where this text is leading me this week.
Oh, that's beautiful, Bobby. And so many of your comments were having me think back to the story of Elijah and the still small voice, in part because it's the voice that, we have to attune to, and it's quiet, and you have to intentionally attune to it. And also because Elijah really struggles to recognize that there are other people who are responding to that call at the same time. Like he feels alone and is not alone.
That's a lovely connection. What about you, Amy? Where's this text taking you?
Especially I think in light of your beautiful words about Ash Wednesday in the beginning, in this call to sort of like an accounting of the soul and an accounting of the community and what is our role in the world right now. I'm thinking of a Hasidic story. So I'm going to tell a story as my final words. It takes place in a small town where there's a rabbi named Naphtali. And in this town, it was the custom of wealthy people who had a house who stood sort of isolated or out in the woods, kind of far away from town. They would hire someone to watch over their property at night, a shomer, to sort of guard against thieves and bandits, against wolves who might harm their animals. And so late one evening, the rabbi is sort of out walking in the woods and he encounters a watchman like this. And the rabbi says to him, "For whom are you working?" And the man tells him. And then the man inquires of the rabbi, "And for whom are you working, Rabbi?" And the rabbi is sort of dumbstruck by this and then asks the man, "Will you work for me?" And he says, I would like to do that, but what would my responsibilities be? And the rabbi says, "To remind me for whom I work."
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it is, in this story of, a shepherd, which is really a shomer, sort of in a different way, like, for whom do we work? What is the vision that we are bound to protect and willing to protect and take seriously, and not be sort of the hired hand who will run when the going gets tough? I don't know. It's a question I'm thinking a lot about right now in these days.
Yeah. Beautiful, Amy. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, we return to our regularly scheduled rotation.
Yes.
Next time with the story of Lazarus.
Yes.
And I look forward to it. And I enjoyed this conversation today, Bobby.
Me too, Amy. I'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us to keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping us make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we continue on with John chapter 11, verses 1 through 53. Until then, keep on digging.